Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special episode of CAOverwatch. We are joined with one of our most exciting guests to date, and that is Adam from Overactive Media. For those of you who don't know, Adam is and correct me if I'm wrong, you can give yourself a little introduction in a second, but the co-founder and the chief strategy operation person down at Overactive Media. And if you are unaware, Overactive Media actually owns both the Toronto Defiant and the Toronto Ultra, as well as the Mad Lions, who are in CSGO and League of Legends, I believe. We don't deal with that specifically on the podcast. That's a brief introduction, but with that out of the way, Adam, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got started?
Sure, and happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. Long-time subscriber of CAOverwatch, and love the work that you guys are doing. As I said, my name is Adamu. I, along with a small cadre of other people, came up with the crazy idea of bringing an Overwatch League team to Toronto. We've had obviously an incredible run of successes and challenges since the league started in 2019.
You can say that again.
We've added Toronto Ultra, which is our Call of Duty team. And we've now also got a League of Legends team in Europe under the Mad Lions label, and a CSGO team in the Flashpoint League under the Mad Lions label as well. So it's been an incredible ride. I work with the best and most passionate people in the world, and it's really, the blur between life and work has just become a big jumble, and it's just I'm having the time of my life at all times.
No, I mean, and that's awesome. And I mean, again, like I said, I think you put it best where we've had some ups and downs in terms of the Toronto Defiant and this organization. So, I mean, let's just jump right into it, right? I mean, we're here to talk Defiant. That's what we do on this podcast, and that's one of the things I think you're best at. So this is one of those teams that coming into the year had a lot of promise, had a lot of hope. And then obviously things haven't necessarily gone as planned. So my first sort of question to you was, when this team was constructed, and we had Jay to talk about it, but what were some of the thoughts that went into the construction of this roster? Because I know you had a recent Reddit post about it. The thoughts that went into the construction of this roster, and sort of like, how did the COVID situation really change the direction of this team?
Sure. At the end of last season, I kind of felt like we kind of crawled into the ending there. I think we took a detour that didn't work out for us, to be perfectly honest. And the guys in Vancouver, with the runaway roster, maybe showed the optimal way of entering a league with a Korean roster. But, more or less, as we were kind of watching what was happening that year, and if you remember, in 2019, we had some early success, and then there was some kind of things we got sideswiped, and then again we made some changes. We realized that, we have to have some kind of fundamental principles as an organization, and one of those decisions that we made last year was that the language of the organization around the world will be English. Right, and that is the language that our teams communicate to us and to each other in, and that, for good or for worse, and there's positives and negatives for it, but that's what we're going to do, and that applies to our League of Legends and our CS:GO and our Ultra. That's across the organization. I think our fans are predominantly in watching and listening and engaging in English. And when we made that decision, I mean, let's if you take a look at the skill level in the Overwatch League, it is skewed towards Korean players. I was watching the May Melee this weekend, and 11 of the 12 players on the final map were Korean, right? And so, I mean, by making that decision, it eliminates really from contention some unilingual Korean players and unilingual players from any country. And so when we looked at what was available out there for team construction at the beginning of the year, we kind of figured that, if we are not going to go with a Korean roster, probably the best we could do, if everything came together and we got every player that we wanted that could speak English as either a first or second or third language, was probably 6 to maybe 12, depending on how well we basically put the things together.
Okay.
And then beyond that, we kind of decided, that we wanted to bring the best Canadian players to the best Canadian city.
Yep.
And many of them were available. We were aware of that. We had decided to participate in the World Championships, the Overwatch World Championships, and invited them all to Toronto for that. And we were involved and met them all. Really, my kind of intention there was to assess them and to try to figure out what they were like and kind of where they were at. And I think at the end of everything, we wanted to be in kind of the, let's say, the 6 to 10 range at worst, okay?
Yeah.
With upside beyond 6, okay? And to do that, we also wanted to basically build the team for the reality of the season. And so the other factors that we considered was the squad has to be able to play on a live stage. Okay, playing live in front of a crowd is different from playing in a small studio. Absolutely. Or on LAN. Okay, so we built a live-focused squad. Okay, that thrives under that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the meta and the changing meta and the way that works in Overwatch, going from GOATs to the dive to the different kinds of metas,
yes,
is important to us. And we built a team that would improve over time under a given meta, right? So as we basically built some synergies because a new squad is going to take some time to get together.
Yes,
we wanted a squad that could learn and get better over time. And to us, what was important was mechanical skill first, and then the ability to learn the meta over a period of time second. And so we built the team for that kind of an environment. And then really everything happened and worked against us. Okay, yeah. So the squad that was built for that kind of a meta is and was not as effective under a hero pool meta where it changes every single week.
Yes.
Okay, that is not where it's optimized. You want much more flexible players, guys that can basically play many different heroes, and that can learn really, really quickly over 1 or 2 days because they've got a whole bunch of experience and can kind of get the meta and then be ready to play. Okay, that's not what we tuned for. And secondly, our players, guys like Logix and Surefour and Agilities and Nevix, like these guys are best in front of an audience. Okay, and if you watch some of our games before COVID shut it down, you could see, Surefour fist pumping, Agilities. We played really well against Paris. We had some great games out there, and you could see the energy levels were high. And being isolated in your apartment and playing in this environment is just a whole different kind of kettle of beans. And give me a second.
No problem. So we're going to take a little bit of a break there, clearly.
Yeah.
I was just going to try to fill the silence here with some commentary. But yeah, no, please continue. It was a really interesting thing. Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
I decided to put the juicer together in the kitchen across the road. Anyway, so when the changes that have basically happened have adversely affected our plan going into the year, and part of the plan was also to basically choose a smaller roster, and to develop them over the course of the season. We believed that we would start off weaker and then strengthen as the year went on. And we have a great deal of confidence in many of our young players and our rookie players that are on the squad. But when you're doing something new every single week and you don't have any substitutes to put in, and the pressure mounts, it gets to you mentally, it gets to you emotionally, and the quality of your play declines. And that's kind of where we're at here at the halfway point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand. Like, I understand that, especially since, Hero Pools was announced, obviously before the season started, but after the roster was constructed. And even things like COVID, nobody saw coming, right? That was one thing that you absolutely couldn't control. I guess part of the question comes down to this. Hero Pools was announced before the season started, and I know that the team... You say that these players maybe didn't adjust as well to learning new heroes and picking them up very quickly, but I would actually argue that that's some of the strengths of some of the players on our team is actually their ability to be flexible, especially a guy like Surefour. So I wonder maybe why once that the hero pools was first announced, why the decision wasn't made potentially to bring some other players in to add depth at certain positions. I know like not having a depth at tank was something that was talked about day one, right? This wasn't a hindsight thing. This was day one. This was a concern from us. This was a concern from a lot of people in the community that while I was pretty high on Nevix going into the year, he still hadn't played in the Overwatch League in over a year. And then Beast also had not only not really played in the Overwatch League ever, but didn't even really play in contenders. So there's a lot of risk associated with our tank line. And I don't think it's been as bad as some people have made it out to be, but personally I found it a little bit underwhelming. So I wonder why maybe there wasn't some, like once you figured out that hero pools were going to be a thing, why maybe some backup people weren't signed. I mean, we see people like Boston constantly pick up other players, like Halo and Punk haven't picked up from contenders. And I know recently we just made a pickup, and we can get into that later on. But this was something that I thought maybe could have been looked at a little bit earlier. So maybe why wasn't that something you guys really looked at, let's say a month ago?
Well, okay, a month ago would have been April, right? And, so you're right. Hero pools were in place there at the beginning of the season, but after we had constructed the roster, right? We had gone to a boot camp in Korea. Yeah. We were putting it together. Actually, we were reasonably optimistic, and ultimately, it's hard to prejudge how well the team is going to respond to something new like that, right?
Yeah.
The tank position is incredibly important in Overwatch, as you guys know, and I'm not going to try to sell myself as an expert in coaching or scouting, but I do know enough to know how important the tank positions are. And Nevix's role, both need to be leaders, I guess is the way that we look at it, particularly the leadership based on kind of what I hear and what I see. The leadership in the most effective teams is going to come from the tank and from the support, right? And those are the positions that basically have to call out. Those are your in-game leaders, because they've got better vision of what's happening. The DPS guys are right in the middle there, kind of not getting the visibility.
I agree.
So Surefour's strength and agilities and logics and so forth in that area, in terms of calling things out, was valuable, but it's not their role, right?
Yeah.
And then with respect to the support position, we've got one of the best supports in the league in Kruise.
Completely agree.
He is used to playing on a mixed roster. English is not his first language, and it is not optimal to have Kruise do the calling on that. He does communicate very well, but if it takes you an extra millisecond to kind of decipher what he says, then you're going to be behind the play, right? And then the backup there was Kellix, who was also a newer player, and really that is not and was not his strengths, right? So that was a weakness in him, and he retired under really the pressure of both the changes in the coronavirus and so forth, but also the hero pools. That just puts a lot of stress in particularly younger players that you have to manage. And so then a lot of the pressure moves over to Adam Beast, and he is a rookie, right? And so he is, I think you're being a little hard on him. He's much more talented than perhaps it shows in some of the games, that particularly some of the things that haven't gone our way.
For the record, and sorry, before you continue, we've actually, I think, praised Beast a lot more than the community. I think the general consensus is that he's like the number one issue with this team, and I don't necessarily agree. I actually think his Reinhardt's pretty decent. And his monkey gets a lot of credit. Like, we multiple times on the show, we've sort of the defended Beast, and you can go to the comment sections where I'll always be like, I don't think Beast is this like terrible feeder that everyone makes him out to be, but I do think the tank line as a whole is a little bit underwhelming. But sorry, continue. That was
okay. I mean, that's and I'll take that feedback. And I'll tell you that he's an extremely passionate young player. I think he's got great prospects in the league. I think it is unfair to make him the in-game leader in terms of that was the default position. I think it's unfair to leave him there without somebody that could substitute in, maybe with some more experience on the main tank line. Main tank is a tough role to fill, because you need somebody that is obviously mechanically strong and an in-game leader. Adam can be both over time, but it takes time under high-pressure situations for a young rookie. If he is underperforming and you have a hero pool situation where a change comes and he's got to call the shots, and he is the least experienced guy on the team. That is a struggle that I do not blame him for, but I will admit that he has struggled under that, and we've been trying to work, with him on that. And that's part of the reason why, if you've read, I posted some things on Discord, we are taking this halfway point now to see if we can add some additional support in terms of, some additional resources, maybe some additional players that can basically come in, which isn't to say that Adam is going to be gone or anything like that. It's just I think having a sub in place can be valuable for the team. And we don't have anybody in mind yet, I'll tell you that. It's something that we're going to be looking for. But beyond that, we've also brought Numlock in, right? And Numlock is a more experienced player. He is I'm not sure if it's public yet, but if it's not, you guys have the scoop.
Yeah, it's not, for the record. Thank you for that.
Okay, that's a scoop. He came in and started coaching the tank line. What we've done is we've moved Mangachu to a DPS coach. Yeah. And so he's working with the DPS players. Mangachu is very, very good, and he's developing very well as a coach as well, and we're happy to have him over there. Yeah. Numlock is coming in. He's going to work with the tanks, and he's going to be basically our tank-focused coach. I think we're seeing an impact and an improvement there right away. In the worst case, maybe he can come in and play too, because he still has it.
Well, but that's what I was going to ask: is his role at this point only as a coach? Because I look at this, and this is one of my criticisms. Not great criticisms. It was hard to see Shockwave pop off because I think the Montreal Rebellion were struggling in contenders, to put it lightly, right? It had a hard time getting out of the round of 12. And then there was changes made where they brought in Numlock and Shockwave, and you saw an immediate improvement. And not only did you see an immediate improvement, but you saw a pretty drastic drop-off from the teams that they left. So I was really wondering that, is Numlock being brought in as a player coach, or is it going to be one of those, leadership figures on the team where you're right, if the right meta comes into play, we actually might see him play, as well as continue to help coach and develop the tank lineup as a whole?
Well, look, I don't want to give you guys all of the scoops, but I can tell you that right now his role is as coach. Okay. And as I said before, somebody that has a deep knowledge and understanding of the game and can see the game develop, somebody that can provide the kind of coaching information and knowledge that Numlock can bring, and we're assessing him and his ability to do that. Yep. Can probably also have a role maybe as an in-game leader, and I think there's nothing announced there, but we are well aware of Numlock's abilities, and Shockwave obviously has done pretty well for the Titans too. Yeah,
no, I agree. So I think that's a good move because, like I said, I agree that the Beast has gotten too much hate. I think Agilities has also gotten too much hate from the community as a whole. We've had to defend both multiple times on the show because you're right. He is a rookie. He is coming off of a year that. Obviously with the whole Chengdu thing, him coming back to Fusion and not starting, that wasn't necessarily his fault either, right? It was a lot of unfortunate circumstances, and I've heard he's a very competitive driven player who's constantly striving to improve, and that's something you really want in an up and coming player. And I actually don't think he's performed nearly as bad as some people have made him out to be. I actually think he's hit some fantastic shatters relatively consistently. It's just been one of the things, like you said, where because he is new and that leadership role has been sort of thrust upon him in certain ways that you have seen some weaknesses. So I think the replacement was always my biggest criticism because I actually liked Beast as a pickup and I still like Beast as a pickup. It was sort of the lack of backups I thought was something because that was a day one thing, but obviously you guys have clearly addressed that. And I think the coaching decision to bring Numlocked in, especially after Feifei retired, is a really strong one. So, obviously. And
I think there's going to be more moves. Okay. Yeah. You saw that we brought ZYKK in as well. And I think he played very well. He's just really solid on the May. Yeah. And, I think we are, going into the May Melee, the last couple of weeks of scrims were just horrible, right? Yeah. It was kind of really stressing me out. Okay. Yeah. And the energy levels of the players were at an all-time low for the year, right? Brady, that's Agilities, was feeling under the weather. So I can say that part of the reason why he hasn't been playing is he's been feeling under the weather, and we've basically given him some time to recover physically. Surefour has also, struggled a little bit with. As I was saying before, Surefour is an incredibly fierce competitor. The guy wants to win every scrim that he is in.
Yep.
He has been feeling burnt out and a little frustrated, I would say, with, the fact that we're not doing well in the scrims. Okay.
Yeah.
And for Surefour and for other guys, he doesn't care whether it's a scrim or whether it's a game. You put in 100% every time.
Absolutely
right?
agree. It's a good mentality to have.
And with some guys, look, I mean, you scrim every single day. You have 2 or 3 blocks, okay? You might not bring it all every time. And if you're not bringing it all every time for too many times in a row, okay, there's going to be tension among some of the more senior players and some of the other guys that are there. And keeping everybody, kind of psychologically fit is very important for the team and the balance, right? And there is nobody that everybody on this team respects more than Surefour. The guy is like one of the OGs in Overwatch.
Yep.
I think he's probably our best player along with Kruise in terms of just the mechanics when you see the guy pop off. And I knew that with Surefour, he was having some challenges that a break would be good for him for the long term and the rest of the season, when he was accidentally popped into the San Francisco Shock game and the guy just destroyed everybody, right?
Yeah.
He was kind of feeling frustrated. He was given a week off. He accidentally was basically put in. And I was watching that and I thought, okay, this is Surefour sending a message, right? That if I want to play, okay, if I want to basically be the best player in this league, I can still do it, but you guys got to get your act together and do the same thing back for me.
Yeah,
and
he looked good.
And so we've given him a break. I mean, that's kind of what we preempted it. We see that people have retired in this league, okay, that are sad to see go. We see people getting frustrated. You've got a guy here that thrives under intense pressure. He's one of the best players. He didn't sign up to play from home. He didn't sign up to play for a team that is struggling. And if I can basically give him some time to get his shit together so we can get our shit together, all right, especially going into a break when we are scrimming not very well, and I'm not overly optimistic, and then use those next 2 weeks to basically bring him back and rebuild, that's the best thing I can do for him and the team.
Okay, I mean, one of the questions everyone wanted to know was where Surefour, why wasn't he playing? And again, some people were like, why do you think this guy? I knew there was more to it than that. So thank you for sort of clearing that up, because
there's no drama though. There's no like Surefour has never said anything like, oh, I'm going to retire or I want to quit. Right? Like that is not where we're at with Surefour. Where we are with Surefour is I made a commitment to him when we brought him on. There was a couple of things. First of all, I said, you're the best Canadian player in the world, and I want the best Canadian player in the world to be on my team. And secondly, I made a commitment to him that we were going to be doing whatever we could to make this team a competitive team, and we were failing him on that front. Yeah. And so, I'm Brady's under the weather. Surefour is a little frustrated. I've got this young kid, ZYKK, who is popping off over there that I can kind of bring in and trial going into a bit of a tough period for us.
Yeah. And
I think it was a great idea. The idea came from Jay. I agreed with it. We brought him on, and I think this kid's got a lot of potential too.
Yeah, and so let's talk about ZYKK, because obviously a little bit of a rough start, but for the most part, from what I can tell, it was sort of like you said, Brady was under the weather. I don't know how much preparation in terms of how much scrim time did he get. Like, it was a little bit. I think he struggled a little bit, but that's like for the most part to be expected. Like, I saw his tweet where he was like apologizing, and I was like, man, you don't need to apologize, right? Like, there was issues with this, and it's so unfair to expect greatness from someone coming into an already established roster with, like, essentially, from what I could gather at least, not a ton of scrim time. So, and I thought he did okay. Like, you're right. Like, I mean, whatever. He has time to improve. He has time to build his team chemistry and all of that. So,
hello.
Yeah, Chris, we can hear you. What's up?
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry. I've had some big mic troubles here.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So we can hear you now. So that's good. I was just gonna ask, like, the thoughts that went into ZYKK, the 2-week trial. So just to clarify, your plan is to trial this kid, see what he's good at, because I actually thought his May was good. His Echo a little bit less so, but again, his May was really good, and that was a bit of a weakness for this team. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Is this sort of the plan, that to keep him on the team and try to develop this, and sort of like what Washington Justice did with Janu and Stitch? And where's your guys' heads at with that?
We're going to assess. The players are going to start scrimming again beginning on Tuesday, and he's going to be in the rotation for the scrims. He came in last Tuesday in terms of he started scrimming with us at that point. We were kind of trying him and Logix, him and Surefour, combinations. Brady was, like I said, he was feeling a little bit under the weather, so Brady wasn't scrimming with us last week. Mm-hmm. And the combinations of kind of ZYKK, Surefour, Logix, and ZYKK were all kind of working very well. We thought we had a pretty good cadence there. He didn't scrim much, 3 or 4 days. Near the latter half of the week, we went exclusively with Logix and ZYKK. Once we kind of decided that Surefour wasn't going to play on the weekend, we just kind of went with the two of them. I think he scrimmed better than he did, say, on the first map. I think he was a little nervous there. Yeah. Look, he's playing for the first time. He's on with some of his heroes on both teams, and he's a little nervous. I think he did well, and I think he's got a lot of upside. He scrimmed very well. I think his hero pool is complementary to what we've got, and as of this point. Again, I'm not going to commit 100% to anything, but I can say that I like him, and I think he's got a role here.
That's great. And finally, my mic's working. I've wanted to ask so many questions throughout this. What a weird time for a technical difficulty. But with the addition of ZYKK, possible addition of ZYKK for a longer role, do you see Toronto Defiant trending in general to a larger roster to kind of complement hero pools? And if so, to take on that. I know one of the main things that came from our podcast with Jay is that there's a lot of trouble with their large roster last year because when people are benched to brew toxicity. Do you think that's something that'll be avoidable if you guys trend towards a larger roster? And is there certain things that you've learned from last year that you could possibly employ? That is the case?
Yeah, I don't, again, I think our roster right now is basically... 6, and then Roki would be 7, ZYKK would be 8. Mangachu is really focusing mostly on coaching and Numlock as well. So, I don't think we have, a huge roster. I think, I think we're going to do some kicking of the tires and testing things out. Look, I'll tell you what I told our guys last week going into this weekend, right? Yeah. If you want to retire, then retire, okay? And everybody will be sorry to see you go. But if you want to do that, let me know, and we'll figure out an exit strategy for you. Mm-hmm. But if you're not going to retire, I need you to come in every day and give 100%.
Absolutely.
At every scrim, okay? And if you're not giving 100% at every scrim, I don't care if it's the third block of the day, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're not giving 100%, I would much rather have somebody coming in that's half as good as you and putting in 100% than having you put in 50%, okay? And so what we're going to do is I am going to make sure that I've got options, right? And it doesn't matter for which role or for which person. And you are not giving 100%, particularly with this 2-week rule, right? Where I can basically trial people, right? I can bring people in and they will play for you. And if they basically start kicking your ass and we've got better chemistry, you're not going to be able to come back in. So don't lose what you have, right? Yeah. And I think we need some of that pressure, okay? Some of that pressure that you're talking about, Chris, in terms of people not wanting to be benched, okay? We need that pressure on some of these guys to basically make sure they're giving 100%. Look, it's tough. I get it. Yeah. They're in their apartments, okay? This is not what they asked for. But you know what? We've got our fans out there that expect the best of them and the best of us and the best of our coaches. And this is not going to be an organization where you can ride because you're unhappy because, you lost to the Golden Gophers last scrim set, okay?
Yeah. There's definitely something I love to draw parallels between esports, especially Overwatch, and like traditional sports. I think one thing that you guys have tried to do really well, and one thing you're trying to go towards is build longevity. And it's so hard to build longevity in an esport like Overwatch because these individuals, they can just retire and go make money from streaming. or they can go and use skills that are kind of
Some
transferable to some can, and use these skills that are kind of transferable to a different game. Whereas if you're playing hockey, you can't go stream hockey, and those skills aren't transferable to a thing like football. So the pressure to stay where you are and really work on yourself, work on your ability to get better in certain areas is a lot higher than I think it is, from the outside at least, from outsider's perspective, than it is in Overwatch, and that makes it so much harder to build longevity. So I think it's definitely good that you guys are trying to train people to have more positive motivation, positive pressure in those types of areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you've got, and I won't say it's like, we have a big problem with any one of these players, right? It's just sometimes it's a lack of motivation that basically sets in. And what happens is the guys that are 100% full intensity, right, they get demotivated when some of the other guys aren't 100% full intensity, right? And so that ends up eating away at the people that are committed, right? And again, if you do not have a deep enough bench to basically make changes, even if somebody's just feeling like, crap and needs a few days off of scrimming, if you don't have that and they need to be there every single time, it just, you go in the wrong direction. And like I said, the last couple of weeks of scrims, I've been watching them closely. I've been kind of talking to the coaches. I am not happy with the level of energy that we have in them or had in them.
Yeah.
And we cannot be successful as an organization or as a team. Look, we are a team that is actually very good mechanically. We've got a great group of players. I would like, I was watching those games on the weekend, like I'm sure that you guys were, and seeing some peak Overwatch. Like, we can be there. I can tell you, we scrimmed Atlanta in the week before, and we beat them 5 maps in a row, okay?
Yeah.
Because they were up for that game, okay?
Yeah.
And they were pumped, and I gave them the speech that I just told you about, that I gave them about kicking their ass and putting in the energy, and they popped into that game, and they had the energy, and they were looking like peak Overwatch Defiant, okay?
Yeah.
But the problem is, it right now, it's not lasting, and we got to get to that point where it does.
Yeah, and it's because I agree. Like, this is why it's one of those teams where I've talked about sometimes just like giving the fans hope. Man, people forget this was a team that brought the Philadelphia Fusion to 5 maps. This was a team that the LA Valiant just came top 4 in that Overwatch tournament, and we absolutely should have won that game. That game was more than winnable for us.
Gladiators too. We should have beat the Gladiators.
I completely agree, and even the Shock. I understand that, like, you're like, hey, with the Shock are a really good team. The first map we won. The Kings Row, we should have won had there not been a boop, and even Rialto was an incredibly close match that easily could have been 3-1 Defiant. So there's multiple times where I've been like, man, this Defiant team is so close to kind of getting over this hump. It just seems like every time they're close, there's a Moth 3-man boop, or there's
and that's a scrim problem, right? And so what's happening there is, when you've got game day energy, right?
Yeah.
These guys are playing with more energy, right? But because they haven't been doing it during the week, okay, they're not used to the pressure when the time comes up, right?
Yeah.
They're not used to playing with that intensity. And when it comes right down to it, mental mistakes are happening, and they are basically, everybody's saying, well, what just happened there, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to get to that energy level and that intensity level. And there is just, and I'll say it to the guys if they're watching, like, guys, this is like, it's on you. You've got to bring the energy in every single day. Okay, you are professional players doing, basically having the time of your life, okay, making more money than you ever thought you could possibly make playing video games. You're a star. People wear your jersey, and walk around and pay big money for it too, because those things are expensive. And
I have one.
You the only thing that you need to do back is basically you got to communicate, during the scrims and the games. And you got to put in 100% when you're playing a game, whether it's a practice or it's a match game. Those are the 2 things that we ask of you, and it's not a lot, okay? Yeah. And we both as an organization and as fans and everybody else, has that expectation of these guys. I think they want to do it. I think we need to break out of this I'm in my apartment mentality. That is the biggest problem. If we had the facility available, we were practicing, and we had live events, this would not be an issue. I can understand you get down on yourself. You're not winning. You lose to Houston after taking Philadelphia to 5.
Yeah.
You're kind of on a downward spiral. You kind of get down on yourself psychologically. You feel a little gray. You're not allowed to leave. Like, I understand that, okay? But now we're going into nice warm weather. The sun is shining.
Yeah.
Let's get the energy out and let's kick some ass.
No, and I mean, I love that mentality. I understand like the whole player wellness, and I know you guys do too, right? Like, we went at Baroy, and I know it's a big part of it. Obviously, the coronavirus situation of playing in your apartments, like, I think everyone's very and on top of that, hero pools, which again I've heard a lot of pro players talk about, and organizations, how much it's put pressure on the coaching staff and the players. So like, I think everyone's understanding of the mental strain that this sort of thing takes. But I like your idea as to like, if you want to retire, you will support them in that decision. But if they are going to stay on and stay in contract and stay with the team, like, you just expect them to give it their all, which I think is true for almost every job. Now, it doesn't always happen, but I think that's a really good mentality to have in competitive, esports, as well as like competitive sports. It's pretty transferable across multiple different industries. So this is, I think, a little bit similar, because I look at the acquisition of a guy like Kruise, and I wonder if he was someone who was almost brought in directly to sort of try to help mitigate this issue. Is that what you guys had in mind with Kruise? Because mechanically, and obviously he was on the, I don't know if I can say mechanically, that's not fair, but he was on the Paris Eternal last year, and they obviously didn't exactly light the league on fire. When you brought in like someone like Kruise, what was sort of the rationale behind that decision? Was it sort of to help sort of add this spark that you've just been talking about, because he is such a vocal and driven player? Yeah. Is that sort of what you guys had in mind there?
Yeah, so when we've got basically, multiple layers to selecting players, and it's in a better place now than it was, at the beginning of the season. We're kind of building on it all the way through. One of the things that we do is we put together like a psych assessment where they do a psych test that we have prepared. All of our players across all of our teams need to do it, including the coaches and myself, right? And what that shows is, which characteristics kind of really stand out and which players you're more compatible with and so forth, right? Yeah. And what we do, in order to be successful on that stuff, we go into looking for a player knowing what we want the psych assessment to say, okay? Mm-hmm. And what we wanted with that position, particularly with Kellex moving, where I was saying earlier on where we were weak was on the communication and the shot calling and the in-game leadership. This guy is basically off the charts on all of those areas, right?
Completely. Yeah, I've never met him personally, but
right. He is. I mean, he made an impact on that right away, right? Yeah. He is a guy that basically is an excellent teammate. He rallies everybody. He's the first guy to basically say, "Hey, don't let that loss bother you guys. We're on to the next one. Let's kind of move it forward." He is a unifier, right? He's brought other players that had very strong leadership potential, but are not like the alpha leader. They're kind of a good beta leader. Yeah. And in the absence of an alpha leader, the beta leaders also kind of suffer, right? Yeah. And so by him stepping up, other guys in those secondary roles have also stepped up. And to me, that position needed somebody, first and foremost, obviously that was mechanically gifted enough to be able to play Overwatch at a professional level.
Obviously, absolutely, without saying.
To me, that was more important, because if we could get we've also got Kruise, one of the best guys on the other side playing with them. And if we could basically increase the level of communication, I thought that, and I think we can be a much more effective team. It's not so much always having, like, you can get the 5 best players in the league, or the 6 best players in the league in each position, and basically have a team that is not very good. This is a team game, okay? And Kruise is fundamentally important to the team mentality that we're putting together. We're really happy to have him.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I first saw the pickup, obviously, like I said, with the whole Pearson thing, I was a little bit concerned, but I was like, his shot calling, his decisiveness is just so, from what I've heard, like you said, off the charts, that I was like, if that was a weakness in this team, then clearly you addressed it with arguably one of the best possible players you could go out and get, especially since he was pretty good last year. Like, the Paris Eternal had their struggles, but Kruise, no one ever really singled him out as like the issue with that team. Like, I've actually heard pretty good things about him. Obviously I wasn't on the team last year, but I did like that, especially in replacing of someone like Kellex, like you said, if that was an issue and a weakness with the team. I think it was a good call. So
yeah, he's had an impact already, and I think, kind of going forward, I see that there's few players that can do the role that I've seen in terms of basically being the team leader and a unifier.
Yeah.
It just like he is. Like I have not met him in person yet because of COVID, and I think he's still not in Toronto yet. But he is a guy that you could basically hang around with and be best buds with at the same time as like a fierce competitor. And you need people like that on the team.
Yeah. So I completely agree, and I think it's going to be one of those things where, and I like that you brought up earlier that you guys are being Atlanta, because I actually agree. Like I had this going into this weekend. Had I not seen the Vancouver game, I actually might have predicted you guys over Atlanta because of how you guys looked versus, like I said, the Gladiators, Shock, and the Valiant.
Atlanta always kicks their ass in scrims, and so it's frustrating. I think there's just some teams you just don't do well against, and when we beat them that week, it was obviously kind of it lifted us up. But then on the other hand, when Florida picked Atlanta, everybody thought that was a surprise, and it wasn't a surprise to us because we know that Florida always beats Atlanta the same way that Atlanta always beats us, right?
Yeah.
So,
and Florida had a good run too, which is really cool. So I guess I'm sort of transitioning a little bit to because it was such a positive weekend for Overwatch, and I don't want to bring any negativity on the May Melee tournament. I think it did.
Sure.
A lot of people had a lot of fantastic takeaways. The viewership did really well. It was one of the first times I think since like the New York homestand at the beginning of the year, right, where it was just like overwhelming positivity amongst the entire community.
It was.
There's very little negative to say about how successful that tournament was, and the break I think was really well timed, and they're continuing the tournaments. Like there's a lot of really good things. We can finally get our tokens back.
Watching that Valorant, which was sweet.
And the Shanghai Seoul Dynasty game was fantastic, and I can't think of two better franchises in that region that I'd rather see go at it than the Seoul Dynasty Shanghai Dragons. So I think a lot of positivity to go around. It was a little bit unfortunate that from the Defiant side, there was this sort of cloud of negativity because of how it went. And I know you put out a big Reddit post. Not Reddit post, sorry. Discord post in the Toronto Defiant Discord. If you guys aren't there, you should join. It's, again, a great place to talk general Defiant stuff, and you get posts like this. And I believe it was you who posted that. And first of all, I love the communication. That was something that I wanted more of, and that's one of the reasons I was really happy that you reached out to us to come on the show, because I think it really helps give the fans some insights that they don't necessarily get. But in that post, and we sort of touched on this before, but I just wanted to bring it back. You sort of talked about how this was a really good time to reset, try new things, and then shed some light. Like, we were just wondering if you could shed some light on sort of what you were thinking about and how important this break is. I know we've talked about it a bit before, but really, like,
is there any other thing?
Yeah.
Are there any other things that you guys are thinking of doing apart from the stuff that we've already been talking about?
I think we are. Look, we're taking a look around at if there's going to be adjustments that are going to be made. They're going to be made around this time. I think, like I said, it's a bit of a reset.
Yeah.
We're not satisfied with the kind of performance of the team, and at the same time, I do want to say that because we're not playing everybody, it's hard to know. We went into the May Melee, in 12th place, 0-3. Kind of that looks pretty bad. But look, we played the 3 games was Gladiators, Valiant, and Shock. Okay, and so and then before that, we've also played Florida before we knew how good they really were.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say.
And then Boston has also improved, and Washington and Paris. So I don't think it's as bad as maybe we sometimes kind of put it out there, but sometimes it looks like we're a little disorganized during the game. Yep. It looks like we are not transitioning well, and I think those are things that we need to look at and improve and figure out what barriers are in the way to improving that. Now we have sports psychologist on staff, Martina, who's been working with the players. I think that's a very important role to have to make sure that you've got the communication, kind of levels and the stress levels. We've also got a physiotherapist, a physical conditioning coach that basically works with them. Sometimes they have wrist injuries. I know a few of them had some of those injuries that we've been conditioning them. Yep. It's even harder when you don't have, kind of a crew of backups to basically come in and sit in. Yeah. So they got to play through those. This will give everybody a chance to reset from, ailments, injuries, feeling shitty and down, if I can, use those words on this podcast. And then we're going to look at what adjustments we can make with making changes, bringing things in that maybe we could do better for. And those things I've already given you Numlock, so those other things will be there when they're there.
Yeah, we're not going to pry too much. We really appreciate that one.
Right. And I'm going to get in trouble for that. But anyway, I won't ask you to hold it back.
All right, thank you.
Anyway, I think we are a better team than we've been playing, and that is the worst thing you can say. Like, if you are better than you are playing, then the responsibility for playing like shit is on us.
Yeah.
Okay, and the players, and maybe the coaches, and everybody else. Okay, and so that means we've got to basically do some stuff better. Now, the other thing that I want to basically say is that, I don't want to have our organization, kind of just put up all sorts of barriers and say, everything is perfect. We have no problems. I think being more transparent is better, while respecting people's privacy at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But more transparency is better. This is esports. It doesn't have to be like meat sports, okay? And, when on that Discord post, I basically said, hey, if you've got ideas, send me your ideas.
Yeah.
And there's a few people that basically reached out to me. They friended me, and they gave me some ideas, and we're going to explore them. I mean, there are people out there that are, just like the players were maybe, in their parents' basement, and now they're celebrities and they're playing the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
There are people out there that know this game better than many, people at a professional capacity in the management of the game. Mm-hmm. And if I can basically crowdsource some ideas for them, I'd be an idiot not to do so.
No, I actually I really like that approach. It's funny that it's something. So I think we kind of try to take that same stride with this podcast. We've been critical of the Defiant in the past. Sometimes justified, maybe sometimes we go a little too far. We're just human beings. But we've always supported them, right? Like, we spent a year and a half of our life doing this thing where every week we watch the Defiant games, we come on, we talk about them. I'll always support the Defiant. As soon as the homestand tickets were announced, Chris and I hopped in, bought 2 tickets. You know what I mean? We have our jerseys. We're getting the new jerseys. Like, as much as sometimes we're critical, it's always like, because we care, you know what I mean? It's because we're so passionate about it, because we care so much, and we just want this team to succeed so badly. And I was one of the people who at the beginning of the year had them higher than a lot of people, and I completely agree with you where I do think this team is underperforming to their potential, because I do think there's some really good pieces on this team, and it is hard to see the community sometimes, I think, go a little bit too far in criticizing them. And I completely agree with you that transparency in esports is something that I do think can be improved, and I love that approach. I think when we did the interview with Jay, that was one of the most positive things that a lot of people on the community took away in the comment sections and on Reddit were like, how transparent the Defiant were about the issues that they had, because it really does shine this light. And I think you're right. Like, you still have to tread that line of being respectful. Like, we're critical, but we never try to go in that realm of being disrespectful, or like you said, going into a personal thing. It's always like, you can be critical, but you got to show support and you got to keep respectful. So, I love that approach to it that you guys are taking, and I think a lot of fans are going to be really happy to hear that. And I love the idea. You're right. It's people's jobs to take all the feedback and decide which pieces to sort of take from, but why would you not reach out to people? And you're right. Maybe one idea sparks something in you, and all of a sudden you have this really great idea because you actually listen to the feedback. I think it's a great decision. So we're kind of coming to one of the few last questions I have here. We appreciate your time. The head coach position is something that's been talked about. Obviously, Feifei retired, and I know he left for his reasons. He had a whole twit longer. We discussed it on the show. Yeah. It's interesting that you guys are taking this approach where you have a DPS coach, a tank coach, and I mean, you haven't announced a support coach, but that might be something you do in the future. I'm just trying to logic things out here. Will we see a replacement, or is that, sorry, not will we see a replacement? Is that something you guys plan on doing for this year, or are you kind of trying to stick with that model? No, we're just going to keep a DPS coach, a tank coach, and then obviously look forward into 2021 in the next season?
A coach is an incredibly important role in the organization, and I was sad to see Felix go.
Yeah.
When we're looking at a coach, what we are really looking for is somebody that can help the players to develop. If we can basically have the players be better at the end of the year than at the beginning of the year, through both kind of the strategy, but also the development of their abilities and buying into a system that is effective, and a person has the right mentality, then as an organization, you're going to improve year over year over year, okay? And I think Felix, there's been some negativity towards Felix. I think Felix had what it takes to basically be successful not just over a few months, in a pandemic year where, things happen that were outside of everybody's control, right?
Yeah.
And so the current, as he said in his tweet longer, like it wasn't for him in terms of what was happening,
Exactly.
and he decided to move on, and I respect that because I was just finished, kind of telling you guys that I want 100%, and if you don't want to have 100%, that was never directed at him. I want to make it clear. That was I said that after he had already left, and I was very sad to see him go.
Yeah.
But with the current coaching staff, I mean, it's obvious probably to them and to us and to the fans that these aren't the guys that we brought in to be head coach.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the title that we gave Little Bo is interim head coach.
Yep.
And I want to assess the situation and see what we have, see how things are developing. I think David is his real name, is incredibly strong on the strategy side and his knowledge of the game. I think he did not come in here to be head coach. He's a young coach. He doesn't have a very deep traditional coaching background like Felix had, which we also value. But we're going to give him a run and see what happens. And awesome. As I told him and Alban, like I support you guys. You guys are there, and you don't have to be worried that that I'm going around your back or that other stuff is going on. When something is going on, I will let you know, okay? Because I want us to be aligned here. But it's we need time to assess. If I was to go and look for a head coach again, I would need to do it with some time and some thought, and to make sure that the right person is in there for the long term.
Absolutely.
I think right now we've hitched our wagon to David and Alban, and I think with the support of Jay and myself, I've become more actively involved, as you can tell, just from this kind of thing. And I think we're doing the job that needs to get done right now. And I think, look, in order for us to succeed, we need some simple things to happen. First, it's the energy and the 100% and that kind of stuff that happened. We need to fix some of those communication issues that I talked about that we're working on, and Kruise is a part of that. I think in terms of our squad, I would keep Kariv exactly the same as he is. Kariv is an outstanding player, and if he's got to be top 3-4, in the league, and that maybe even higher, right?
Yep.
We need a Surefour that is popping. Okay, that's kind of the next thing. Surefour is, I think, our most versatile and experienced player, and I need Surefour there, completely, mentally, physically, emotionally playing at his level. Okay, and then I need Surefour supported by other people that are doing the same thing. Logix is an incredibly clutch player, right? That guy is solid. I often kid that if you're going to build a team from scratch, right? Logix is probably a good place to start. The guy has outstanding ability. He is a great teammate.
Yeah.
He's very smart in terms of his ability to understand the strategy and to kind of work with everybody. And he's just an overall great guy. I think Nevix obviously has the leadership over there, and Kruise. So I think if we can kind of start with just those simple things that I said, get these guys back together, playing at their peak, right? I'm not even going to say playing at their peak. Playing with the energy and intensity that they have, okay? Then we will win, because winning is not the result that we're looking for. What we want is to get the best performance out of them, and then winning will take care of itself.
Yeah.
And it's almost a bad message if you win when you haven't put in your best performance, because it kind of shows that you can slide and let it kind of come together, okay? We don't want that. We want the best performance every time. This, to me, is absolutely, a straight-up playoff team, which would be like top 8, top 12 at worst, right? And, I just, I'll tell you, and Jay, if you guys are talking to him, he'll probably let you know, when the games are happening and people are kind of bitching about this and that, I'm on there on our kind of Slack or whatever, basically saying, what, WTF, what is, what is going on? And sometimes Jay actually shuts me off because he can't take it on.
That's so fun. Jay's such a good guy, and he came on the show. That was such a great conversation too. again, the transparency is fantastic. Yeah, so I completely agree. I think Logix is fantastic, especially when he's on. I mean, obviously no one's on 100% of the time, but man, when he's popping, like he's one of the best. Widow, McCree, Ashe, Tracer, especially his Tracer is fantastic. I really wish we'd seen more of that.
Who would you play? Let's say the Shanghai Seoul match there was probably one of the best matches I've seen like in a long time.
It was really good.
It was so good, right? But okay, so you've got Widow Tracer. They were both playing Widow Tracer. I love watching Widow Tracer. That's the most exciting Overwatch to me. So who do you pick on Widow Tracer between? Where do you put Logix and where do you put Surefour?
Logix on Tracer, and it's not even close. For my opinion, it's Surefour and Widow, and it's Logix on Tracer. And personally, I actually think Tracer isn't Surefour's best hero. I think it's actually one of his weaker ones from what I've noticed. And you go to the stats lab and you can look that stuff up. And I think Logix is actually one of the better Tracers in the league. And I think Surefour is a pretty good Widow. Like his Widow and his Ashe, and like he's really good at like taking those off angles and sort of holding those peaks. Whereas I think Logix's Tracer is pretty up top. So personally, I'd go Surefour Widow, Logix Tracer. But I mean, like at that point, if Baroy says otherwise, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to argue with someone like that. But my personal opinion would be Logix Tracer, Surefour on Widow.
All right, I'll check with Baroy and see if he agrees with
yeah,
you. See how much knowledge you're bringing to this.
Yeah, maybe. If it's not right, then just don't say anything. But if it is, you let me know. But yeah, so thank you so much, I think, for answering our questions so far. I think this has been fantastic.
Yeah. I think Chris, you had something there?
Yep.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to one very, very quick question about OAM in general.
Yeah.
With Valorant coming out, do you guys have any thoughts about moving into that space? I know you're working in a couple of FPS game spaces. Valorant seems to be pretty big coming out. Do you guys have any plans for that in the future?
Well, I don't know. What do you guys think of Valorant?
So, I mean, I think that's a good – I was actually going to lead into that question. I was just going to try to – I was literally just going to be like, before we moved off of Overwatch, because thank you so much for coming on. It's been fantastic. Any final thoughts? So Valorant, I actually think, is one of those interesting ones where it's been weird to see the sort of quick decline of it. In terms of the popularity amongst the general public. With that being said, I like its ease of access. I think it hybrids a lot of different games well. I don't think it's this Overwatch killer that it was ever made out to be. I think actually it was in your LinkedIn post where I sort of was like, let's pump the brakes here in terms of the market that it's targeting. Because if you're really down for that methodical, slow, tactile sort of first-person shooter, I don't know why you're not playing Rainbow Six Siege or CSGO, right? If you love Overwatch as much as we do, chances are Valorant isn't going to give you that same sort of feeling. It's just a different game.
It's weird because when I think about Overwatch, for me, Overwatch is a lot funner to watch because it's faster paced. It's a lot of fun. Valorant, if I'm watching it, I think it's a little bit easier for me to understand as a base player, normal player, understand the interactions and what's going on with the strategies. Yeah. Like I have been playing Overwatch for a very long time. And when CAOverwatch does like breakdowns of different team plays, I'm like, oh my gosh, that had so many more moving parts. Yeah.
Great series by the guys. Just a quick shout out to Defiant, the whole CAOverwatch reviews. Yes. If you don't know what Chris is talking about, it's a thing to Defiant do in terms of their YouTube channel. Check that out. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. They cater, I think, to they have two separate advantages that are strong, and I feel like for that reason they may be able to cater to two separate markets, which is something that you would like. You don't want to, I don't think, invest in two different areas that cater to the same market.
So
cannibalism of your viewership.
Mad lines, right? So yeah, personally, I think it's one of those things where I think it's definitely at a sit and wait sort of phase. Because obviously there's no remote esports scene established, and the game hasn't been, I think, taken the world by storm as some people might have thought. But obviously when you have like I said, the chief strategy officer on the show and such a big Overactive media fan, a lot of people in the organization, I think it's a great organization. I'd have to ask the question, is this something you're keeping a close eye on? Any plans for the future? Or are you kind of like Riot, where you're like, we're just going to sit back, we're going to see what happens, and if the right opportunity comes up, then you're going to jump through?
I think you just nailed it right there on the last part. I think so look, we're in League of Legends, the European Championship, the LEC, and so we're already partners with Riot in terms of their ecosystem.
Yep.
Riot is a great partner. We love our relationship with them and with League of Legends and so forth. And we we are very, very supportive of Valorant as a game and hope to see it develop as a viable esport.
Yeah.
Riot is not a company that's going to basically push this thing and make it into an esport, this fall. Okay,
For sure.
I think they have a long-term plan. I mean, look, it took them 10 years to basically release their second game. Okay, these are not guys that are in a rush to do stuff. And I think if Valorant is a viable, kind of esport long-term under, the LEC or the Activision Blizzard kind of model of franchising that we're involved with and sold on, then, absolutely that's something that we are very, very interested in. At this point, though, would I retire from Overwatch to play Valorant? Absolutely not. I think that's just crazy.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
I think it's a risky. The things that go into making something an esport are not something that is well understood. It's like a mix. It's almost like, how do you make a viral video, right? You've got consultants that can kind of advise you. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's viral and nobody knows why. And an esport happens and for the same reason, right? The guys that try to make an esport are the ones that generally not succeed. But again, I would not sell Riot short. And it seems to me like what they did is they took the best out of CSGO.
Yep.
And they made it more marketable to sponsors, broadcasters, and
League of Legends and Dota 2, right? Like, I think it's sort of almost the same thing that they did with that, where it's like a little bit easier barrier of entry to come in for your average player than like CS, for instance.
No, I'm not saying about the average player. I'm talking about the average sponsor, right? So sponsors out there and partners and broadcasters are sitting there because we're involved in CSGO. Like we've actually started up our own league in conjunction with a bunch of other organizations out there, and it's performing very, very well. Yep. And CSGO is a hardcore game for hardcore fans and for grown-ups, okay? Yeah. And our lead sponsor there is a gambling company, right? And you don't kind of lean away from that. That's what CSGO is. And Valve is a very hands-off company, okay? Yep. And that's kind of their model. So from like the business component, Valorant is designed along what it seems to me Riot believes is actually, I won't say Riot believes. Valorant is designed for what I believe are some of CSGO's business weaknesses, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, can I get this thing broadcast on something that is going to be like on, that a mom is going to be able to let her kid watch, right? Yeah. CSGO, absolutely not, right? Valorant, absolutely yes. If I'm a sponsor and I'm at a big kind of advertising company or whatever, and I want to put some money down to an organization or to the league, would I do CSGO? I mean, some of them won't even do Call of Duty. It's a shoot, right?
Yep.
Valorant is kind of cartoony, similar to Overwatch, right? They've taken all of the business objections that CSGO orgs and teams have been complaining about, and they've kind of fixed them, and then they made a game that is as close to CSGO as can possibly be done. Okay,
it's very close.
And so that is a great model. So I think from a business perspective, okay, if that works, I'm in because there's a market for that from the business side. Okay, the issue is where I'm less convinced, right, is that I don't know. Like again, anecdotally, what I've found out there is that I'm not talking about esports people. I'm talking about people that play Fortnite or Overwatch or Rainbow Six. A lot of these guys moved over and gave it a test drive and then went back, right? Yeah. And again, that's all anecdotal because I don't have the statistics that Riot has, right? But before I go out there and build an expensive squad to go in these exhibition games and all this other stuff, like I want to see some more visibility. Like are the actual people playing the game going to play the game in 6 months? Okay, let's start with 6 months, and then we'll kind of see beyond that. Never mind 5 years for Overwatch and 20 years for CSGO. No, if it can last 6 months, let's have this discussion again.
Yeah, no, I think that's I was actually blown away by that answer. It was a really good answer. I think it's a fantastic way of looking at it because I do agree that there's positives from it, but you're right. This idea that it was going to come in here and people were like, it's going to kill Fortnite. It's going to. I'm like, in what world are you a Fortnite player? Like, if you look at Valorant, in my opinion, and you thought to yourself, man, this is the game that I've been waiting for. I've been waiting my whole life. I've just been playing Fortnite, waiting for a game like this. Why are you not already playing CS?
Yeah.
Like, it's different, but it's not that much different to the point where you should have been playing Fortnite. Like, if you love Fortnite, there's reasons why you enjoy Fortnite. If you love playing Overwatch, it's not because you love, like, holding a sightline for a minute and then trying to, like, hit that quick flick shot. Unless you're, like, a Widowmaker one trick. That's not targeted at anyone, but you know what I mean? Like maybe. Yeah. But if you fall in love with Overwatch because you love playing Diva, there's no way. And you might play with your friends because, like I said, I have some friends who they pick up Overwatch and then they're like, oh my god, why is this guy glowing blue? And then they run at him like, oh no, he's nanoed, you can't do that. And it's like there's a little bit of a increased barrier to entry with that game, whereas Valorant is a little bit more simplistic. So I think that's interesting of it. But like if you love Overwatch because you love playing Genji or Mercy or Reinhardt, it's really not the game for you. So I don't.
And you know, it's also like, okay, so what is the kind of personality makeup of a Valorant player, right? And that's kind of the other thing that I look up, right? So like we've got a Call of Duty team and we've got an Overwatch team. When the facility was open, they would both kind of practice in the same facility. One is a console, right? One is a bro game, right? The other one's a bit of a nerdy game, right? You've got these two groups over there. Like, they'd be pleasant to each other, but you kind of know they're probably not going to be best buds. Okay, they're just different kinds of players are, you know, and it's the same thing with like basketball players and hockey players, right? I mean, it's just, it appeals to a different kind of personality type, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, League of Legends is in another kind of category over there. And CSGO is definitely a hardcore kind of thing. Fortnite is another kind of thing. And so what you need to kind of figure out is, like, what kind of a player, like, what is going to be the community for Valorant? And it is not the same as basically saying we're going to grab from all of those, right?
No,
those are very, very different communities, right? And you're not, again, to me, like, an Overwatch player in terms of the personality type. Just, it doesn't seem to me that's the same kind of player that is a Valorant personality. Like, I'm not sure what that's going to be yet. Just doesn't seem to be that one, right? It seems to me to be probably younger people, right? Maybe there's some Fortnite kind of stuff in there. Maybe there's some CSGO stuff in there, right? But people that aspire, right, to be more hardcore than they are, right? And so they see that as maybe like a step up from Fortnite in terms of the hardcore kind of curve. Certainly a step down from CSGO in the hard, right? But if that's where you're going to, right? And think about it, you're a 16, 17-year-old young kid. You've been playing Fortnite since you were 14, right? You want to give it a shot because you want to be a little bit more hardcore. You go over there, and now everybody's telling you, dude, like the real hardcore people are playing CSGO, right? It's going to drain the more hardcore out to me, I think, to CSGO, and it's going to basically revert the other players back to Fortnite or Overwatch or wherever they came from, right? And so, again, I'm not saying that, you know, I know that for sure. I'm just saying, like, where is its identity? And I don't know that we need at least 6 months to try to figure out, like, what is a Valorant player and how is that person different in terms of that community from all these other ones?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Chris, we can't hear you. Sorry. Chris, your mic's gone to...
Yeah.
What a time, right? What a time to be alive.
But I would love nothing more. Just to be clear, I want Valorant to be successful because if Riot does like an LEC or an LCS type of model for Valorant,
it's successful.
I would be all in. Like I think it's a great. I think it will be a great opportunity for us to basically go in there to address some of the fundamental business element weaknesses of Valve's model, right? But hey, let's give them some time. I think that's why the esports orgs are all in. Okay, they're not all in because they're dumb. They're all in because they want to make it happen because the business opportunity, if it works, is really, really good for us.
It's really good. No, and I agree, and I understand that perspective. I think you handled it really well there with your answer because it does take some time, and I mean I'm really excited to see how it's going to do once it's full released. And all of a sudden, you no longer have to make a Twitch account and link a Twitch account and watch a stream in order to get a beta access code.
A couple of weeks, right?
June 2nd, something like that. June 4th. It's really soon. So it's going to be interesting to see when everybody can sort of pick it up and play because, like I said, that's one of its bigger strengths is that it took me like 2 days to learn the maps. I started playing Rainbow Six Siege with my friends the other day, and horrible. I don't know what's going on, right? It's just incredibly high difficulty. Curve to overcome. Like guys jumping out of the second story window and he's wall banging me from across. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Is it in Valorant?
No, this was in Rainbow Six. Whereas Valorant, I'm like, I played for like 2 days and like, I get it. I get the abilities.
Okay, well, tell me what you guys think. So, okay, you guys are Overwatch guys. Play the other game.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So would you guys stick? Like, what would make you want to stick to Valorant?
The thing that would make me want to stick to Valorant is it's ease of access. It's the fact that I have a couple friends who I've tried to show Overwatch, and they won't play it because they're casuals, and I think that right now this is Overwatch's biggest weakness, and people can say whatever they want. Personally, it's an extremely hard game to, like, you turn on the TV, you're seeing the Overwatch League, to actually fully understand to the level of which it would require to, like, really enjoy the beauty that is Overwatch for your average individual person. it's a really hard game to just pick up and play. Like my guy could pick up and play. Like I said, he's playing McCree or Soldier, and he runs at the guy, and all of a sudden the guy turns blue, and he doesn't get it, and he just dies. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to know that the guy who's blue is Nano? Like, it's not like super intuitive to somebody who's not really in that space. Whereas a game like Valorant, a lot of the abilities are like, oh, you're a flashbang, or it's a stun, or it's a heal, right? They're a little bit easier to grasp, and the maps are really, really simple. Whereas like Overwatch is a little bit more complex. So I think that's I play Valorant when like I have a couple of my friends hop on. They're like, hey, you want to play Valorant? I'm like, yeah, sure. They won't play Overwatch with me. I'm like, yeah, I'll play Valorant with you. It is fun.
Right.
It's fun, and I can pick it up and play. Whereas CS:GO, I get wrecked. Rainbow Six, when it came out 2015, I was there. Took 2 years off, came back, wrecked. But also, like, you could argue that that's also one of his weaknesses because of the fact that I haven't played 10,000 hours of it yet. It might get a little bit repetitive. You've seen some people already get bored of the game, right? So it's only been up for a month.
Yeah,
so I'm interested to see where it goes. But that's the main draw, is that like Chris can pick it up and play. My buddy who doesn't really play video games can pick it up and play, and my buddy who's not top tier, but a higher level CS:GO player can pick it up and play, and we can all sort of share in that experience. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. To add on to that, I feel like Valorant for me at the moment it's probably something that is the jack of all trades but the master of none. So you have your true FPS type interactions like CS:GO, and you don't need the level of skill to excel in that Valorant that you do in CS:GO.
Raw mechanical
And
skill.
then for somebody who likes the ability interactions like me, because I have a dinosaur PC and I can only run like 70 frames.
If that.
Yeah. Like Overwatch is better because the interactions are more in depth and you can learn a ton, which makes that playing over time easier.
Right.
Once you learn something to the fullest, at least for me, it becomes a little more boring. Like I love learning things, I love getting to know things well. So I think that Valorant could do well if it ends up pulling all these different people that like kind of like the middle ground, but it can also not do well in 6 months, a year, 2 years, if people realize that they like these more niche abilities and skills, and they stick to those games or areas that require more in-depth knowledge about those areas of play.
Yeah, and it's still really. I mean, they don't really have a spectator mode yet. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, it's really, really early, and I don't think anybody can know for sure. I think, like I said, I would. It may have more uptake in Asia too. That's another thing.
That's
I mean,
what I was
Riot's
gonna
obviously
say.
very big over there. So
I'll never discount Riot's ability to market towards the Asian.
But again, I know that I'm not demographic. Like I said, to me, from a business perspective, I love Valorant. I want Valorant to succeed. Yep. Where I am just a little nervous is like I can see the elements of like the NBA programs that the guys that basically put the game together used to come up with the stuff, and I'm just a little nervous about what seems to be like NBA's designing esports, whether it is that easy, right? To basically that magic that creates like a Rainbow Six or an Overwatch, right? I don't think that came from a business school, right? It came from somebody else, and then the business people marketed it later, right? Yep. And it just, again, I could be completely wrong here. Just my read is it is so well suited to the business of esports that it makes me a little nervous, right? Because if you guys solved all of our problems on the org side, I hope that you kind of didn't overlook like the people that are playing it, right?
Because it takes two to both. And hey, if anyone can do it and merge those two together, right? It's Riot. And if that works, you do have the potential for something special, especially like imagine if Asia, Korea, China loved CS:GO as much as like Europe does, right? Even North America, you'd have something truly special. There's a reason why soccer is the biggest sport in the world, because it's global. Once you can finally find something like that, you're gonna find you're gonna catapult this industry to another level, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. But you're right, I think giving it time is the perfect thing. Okay, the final question, Adam, because it's been such a long conversation. The reason it's gone on so long is because I've just been engaged the entire time. I think it's been a fantastic interview, so thank you for coming on. Overwatch 2, sort of the last question that we're just going to end on, a little bit more fun. How excited are you sort of for this new game, and then what does this look like for the competitive landscape, at least to the, I know we're not going to get another scoop, but at least to the knowledge that you guys have available to you today, what does that really look like for the Overwatch League moving forward and the impacts of the
having a new release is going to be great for the player base. I think it's going to be another hype cycle. I don't know, maybe they'll do drops on Twitch and basically go crazy and all that kind of stuff again.
1.75 million people,
I think
Okay.
again that was a brilliant idea from Riot for Valorant.
Yeah.
I think we need an infusion of new players always coming into Overwatch, and I think that is a catalyst that can basically make that happen. Activision Blizzard is very smart in that it doesn't give us those details so that we can't mess up like I did with the other thing here on interviews like this.
Yeah.
So I really can't tell you
No problem.
what the plans are. I am very excited that there's a Toronto map.
I love that. And a Canadian character.
And a Canadian hero, and I think that's going to be outstanding. Obviously, for us over here, we can do a lot of things marketing that.
Absolutely.
I think that what I am kind of interested in following a little closer with Activision Blizzard and the Overwatch League is the transition plan between where we are now in Overwatch, the current game, now that the last heroes basically come out, and the next game. And I can tell you that there's some guys out there, some usually Twitter people talking about Overwatch being dead and blah, and it's easy to say stuff when you don't have the information and the details and so forth, right? And what I do know is, and we have access to the developers, we have access to like the highest kind of parts of both the Overwatch League, Activision Blizzard. Like these guys are smart people, right?
For sure.
I mean, they didn't get to where they are by not understanding video games and marketing and promotion and how their timing should work and the transitioning of games and all of that other kind of stuff, right? I am absolutely confident that there's going to be that there is a great plan in place, that it's coming together, that we're going to build on the hype between now and the release of Overwatch 2. In other words, I don't think we're going to go steady state where we are until Overwatch 2 is released. I think you're going to build additional hype on the current title. I expect that we're going to have kind of marketing muscle spent by Activision Blizzard around that. And I think that we're going to see some significant growth. It's all about the player base for Overwatch, right? From my perspective, I would love to see if the current player base, if we can get that to double before we get to Overwatch 2, right, with some smart marketing. I think then you've got a big increase to follow from there as well, right? And I think those are the kinds of things I hope that Activision Blizzard is working on. And again, I think watching, again, in particular, anybody that's kind of a little down on Overwatch, if you watch those games this weekend, with the top teams playing, peak Overwatch is, one of maybe the best esport and game to watch, okay? And, the Shanghai Seoul Dynasty thing, I think that 7-game series or 7-map series was probably one of the best esports in terms of the skills and the storylines. And that was out. Like, how can you watch that, okay, and not tell me that this isn't the greatest game in the world?
No, and I completely. I think if you understand, the issue is like it's the people who don't fully grasp what Overwatch is, right? That's when they're sort of like, wait, what's going on? Like, why is this guy using this ability? But if you watch San Fran versus Vancouver last year's Stage 1 Finals, and you watch that Shanghai, like, man, when Overwatch, like you said, when it's peak and when it's done right and when you understand what's going on, there's nothing like it. It's so fat. It's like I think Samito had a tweet where he was like, man, you can critique Overwatch all you want. It has the perfect pace. It's paced so incredibly well between like having enough time to plan and strategize in between team fights, but not sitting there 45 seconds waiting for somebody to pick a character and then I got to go do this and then all of a sudden I got to hold a sideline and now here's the action. Oh, it's over. Like, it's always happening. There's so many moving cogs. It's the perfect combination between like strategy and mechanical skills. And I love that it has that like almost like that like this is a little bit more, I think, more personal, like basketballness to it, where like the main tank is so different from the DPS player, who's so different from the support. It's like a center and a point guard. I love that combination of like two very different skill sets, as opposed to like he can click heads, he can click heads, he can click heads, he can click heads.
And now you put that in Roy Thompson Hall, and you've got 3,500 or 4,000 people there, and you've got the screen and the lights, and then you got the guys up there kind of playing at their peak.
I was so excited.
And then you have all this is the thing,
I was so excited.
And I can tell you that when people are negative on it, I just look at our engagement numbers. Like I look at our Twitter, I look at our feeds, I look at the stuff. Like the engagement for this game is as high as we've ever seen it. It's just, there's been some noise out there. Overwatch has been more affected by COVID than most of the other esports because we had a live, our whole model
that was
gone
the base of it, right? Yep.
Right. And so, the players have felt tired and exhausted, and we've shifted, and all of the stuff that we've talked about for this hour and a half or whatever we've been on.
Yeah.
And, if we can basically be in as good a shape as we are right now with all of the stuff that has happened, like I said, it's kind of sunny skies and it's a sunny day today, and that's how I feel about life right now.
No,
Nice.
I think Overwatch 2 is going to help hit that problem again. Like, you finally have a reason to bring in casual players. Do you not fully understand the Overwatch League? Okay, that's fine. Come play this really cool story mission. Come play these really cool missions.
Exactly.
Level up your character. Do you really enjoy playing that character in a story-based model? Why not try them out online? You know what I mean? Like, I understand that, and I think getting Overwatch to double their player base is going to be very challenging. I'm sure they have a few ways to do it off the top of my head. Like, free to play, it's been something the community's wanted for a while, and I think that'd be really cool to see if they do it. Hey, if they're able to double their player base before it comes out, that's going to be amazing. Best of luck, Blizzard Entertainment. If anyone can do it, I hope they can, because you're right, man. When Overwatch is on, it's just an absolute blast to watch and participate in, and no team, I think no game does it better. So with that out of the way, like you said, it's been an hour and a half. My room is like 1,000 degreys in here. I'm sweating at the PC. I had to close the window because there was noise outside, and I'm looking forward to opening it. I don't know about you, Chris, but personally, I'm good with the whole with all questions. Thank you so much, Anna, for coming on. Just any last shout outs for yourself? Yeah, your Twitter, Toronto Defiant, right? Any things you want to put, we'll put them in the link in the description below. If anyone who's listening to this wants to follow you or the organization or whatever, this is sort of your time to pump your tires, if you will.
Okay, well, anyway, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. It was great being on with you guys. And, you guys can put all of my contact information below if anybody wants to reach me. I love doing this kind of thing. You guys keep doing your kind of thing, and let's see if we can connect a little more often over the rest of the year.
Yeah, Hammond, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for coming on. Awesome.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys. Enjoy.